Hello and welcome to an episode of The Brain Game Changer, how heartfelt stories, awareness and education can change the game. Each week we delve into the experiences of amazing humans, advocates and organisations from all walks of life who share their adversities, the triumphs after tragedies, the milestones and those brain game changing moments right here in front of the mic. Through this journey together, we may find that we can learn some valuable tools, knowledge or education that will lead us into becoming game changers for ourselves, for someone around us, or even for our community. My name is Melissa. Thank you for inviting me into your space. It is great to be with you. Today we have the privileged opportunity to speak with five-time Australian Paralympian Greg Smith, former instructor in the Australian Army, gold medalist, flag bearer at the London 2012 Paralympic Games, husband and father to three wonderful boys. This amazing human lays it all bare right here in front of the mic. It is quite a remarkable conversation, and his honesty, strength, resilience and humour shines throughout it. He is a true gift. Without further ado, let's get into the interview. Good afternoon, Greg, and welcome to the Brain Game Changer podcast. It is wonderful to have you with us today.
Hi, Mel. It's a pleasure to be here.
So as I speak to you, you're just come back from a well-deserved couple of weeks off with your family. How was your time away? What did you get up to?
Yeah, it was great, thank you. We took some time off over the Easter break, which coincided with school holidays, so it worked out well. So I took the Easter break and then the second week as well. So the first week we went to a place called Lake Tyers, which is down near Lakes Entrance. Did a lot of fishing, a lot of drinking wine and enjoying time with family. So my outlaws were all down there as well, so that was great. It was good to spend some time with them. The kids get to catch up with their cousins, so they had a blast. Yeah, so that was really good because we've been down there before, but the access for a manual type wheelchair isn't that great. Like, it's quite a hilly caravan park. It's all dirt roads and it's on top of a cliff, I guess, that looks out over the ocean, and so it's all beach and everything down over, there. So it was a little bit difficult last year, but this time, so in the last sort of 12 months since then, through NDIS, I was funded a 4-wheel drive power wheelchair. So we took that down there, and that just opened up a whole new world, really. So I just, use my normal chair, my small everyday wheelchair around the cabin and things like that. And then whenever I wanted to get out and go off and do things, I'd jump in the power chair and away we went. So we got to access the sand and the beach. First time I've walked along the beach. Walked as inverted commas.
I get you.
We did a 6K walk, which was really cool. Yeah, so that was good fun. Just got to hang out on the sand with the kids, and also went and did some surf fishing with my father-in-law and brother-in-laws, and that was great fun. I'd never really done any surf fishing before, so that was a unique experience and something that I loved and would love to do some more of. So that was a really enjoyable time.
That sounds awesome. And what's been lovely to hear right now is you've added some new normals to your world that weren't accessible beforehand. So that's brilliant.
Yes, no, it was fantastic. And I'm someone that always tries to do everything that I can to stay involved with life, and now that I'm in a wheelchair, but to do something like that was fantastic and thoroughly enjoyable.
That's brilliant. So in researching you, Greg, I have to say it was quite amazing. You have been in 5 Paralympics between the years of 1992 to 2012. You've also participated in the World Championships as well. So as a result of this, you have 10 gold medals, 3 silver medals and 2 bronze medals, both in athletics and wheelchair rugby. You have also been given the Medal of Order of Australia, and you also have an honorary doctorate from the University of Ballarat.
That's right, yes. Doctor of the University.
I love that. So you're just like old Dr. Google.
That's right.
We can come and ask you anything.
Exactly. Yes. Not specialised in anything, but everything.
I love that. So love that. You should have that written on a T-shirt with a big sign.
That's right.
We're going to talk about all these amazing achievements that you've done, but we're going to segue back, and I'm going to ask, what was growing up like for you? How would you describe yourself growing up? Where were you? What did you do?
Yeah, so I'm born and bred pretty much a Ballarat boy. I'm in Victoria. And I would consider what I had as a normal kid. went through primary school, went through high school, got involved with all the sports and things like that you do as you're a kid growing up. Wasn't probably the greatest academic student. I guess I knew the things that I had to do, but I was just probably a little bit lazy at applying myself to pushing myself beyond being an average student. But, outside on the ovals and in the playground and stuff, that was where I loved to be. It was great fun with my friends and playing whatever sports that I could. I think sort of up until about the age of 19, when life pretty well changed, I would have considered it a fairly normal life, Mel.
You described yourself as really sport competitive and internally competitive and very driven with the sports. Did you want to go to university, or were you starting to look at other horizons for your next chapter after finishing year 12?
No, university was probably where I wanted to go. At that stage, I had a focus on becoming a phys ed teacher. I wanted to work in something physical, in sport in some way, and phys ed teaching was probably, you didn't sort of have the high profile strength and conditioning coaches and things like that they have these days in sporting clubs. Phys ed teaching was sort of what I wanted to do at the time. So anyway, I got accepted, finished year 12, got accepted to go to university. Yeah, had the end of the year break over Christmas. My best friends all were out working now. So 2 of them had apprenticeships. One of them was working in a bank in finance. And I had a part-time job working at a store, hardware store called McEwen's, which was, it's basically a Bunnings. So I had a part-time job working, a Friday night and a Saturday morning and Christmas holidays and all those sorts of things. Part-time money it was good. I could put petrol in my car and I could do sort of most of the things. But my mates were all working full-time and they had a lot more money than I did and was, on weekends and things like that. They were all having a lot more fun than I was too because of that fact. So I sort of thought, what, I probably really need to go and get myself a job. If I'm going to take a year off, that's fine, but I need to probably work through the year to see what I really wanted to do with my life if uni wasn't going to work out in any way. One day I was just wandering along a side street in Ballarat and I walked past an army recruitment office. To this day I have absolutely no idea what it was, but I had no plan. I wasn't down the street to do anything like that at all. And I just did this, left-hand turn, walked in through the front doors, asked all these guys some questions about the army. And about an hour later, I went home and told my mum that I'd signed up.
Oh, wow.
I'd never had any inclination to join the army. There was nothing about it that fascinated me in any way. I did all those sorts of, running around, firing sticks at your mates and so, playing war games and stuff like that as a kid. But, I was never interested at all.
How was the news taken when you went home? So your family have thought, okay, Greg's off to university, he's going to do this degree. That's awesome. They've sort of got this vision of where you're heading. And you go home and go, guess what? I'm doing this instead. How was that news taken?
I can clearly remember a sort of dazed expression on my mother's face. She was never ever pushing me into any sorts of career or any direction or anything like that. So for me to kind of change my mind to do something probably wasn't something that would have surprised her in any way. But the fact that to go and do something, I can't even remember what I was doing, and then come home later in the day and tell her that, I'm joining the army and I'm leaving in 6 weeks or something like that, 3 weeks or something. Yeah. So,
wow.
But she had a bit of a dazed expression on her face.
Oh, wow, gosh, I can imagine as a parent, and you're a parent now, you go through all the emotions in your head when your child starts telling you different things that they want to do and you go through all the different layers of emotions just to find a way to deal with it. So you start preparing for the army. Tell us about your entry into the army. What did it entail?
During my time in Armoured Corps, it was about 2 years before I had my accident. I was going off and doing lots of different courses as well. And there was we went and did a parachute course and did some marksmanship stuff. And, I still always had that physical education type thing in the back of my head all the time as well. So I actually applied when a course came up to go and become a physical training instructor with the Army. This is potentially my way of probably still being around Armoured Corps, but then working in a different part and actually training troops and keeping them fit and healthy and probably working as more the Puckapunyal base, like working in that area, training lots of different troops in lots of different corps, loyal soldiers in lots of different corps. So I went off and I did this physical training instructor's course. And just before I left, I sort of started to think things through a bit about being something different in the Army. And I applied to join the SAS to have a go at their course. Only the best are taken, and that's not just physically, but that's mentally and psychologically and all those sorts of things as well. So I have no idea whether I would have ever got through, but I wanted to have a crack at it anyway. So I applied for the course and off I went and did this PTI course. The PTI course went for 8 weeks, I think it was, and that was up in Sydney. And that was great. It was fantastic. I loved it, had a great time. So then they said to me, yep, you know what, there is a position back at Puckapunyal. You can go back to your corps and, you'll become your sub-unit PTI with Armoured Corps. And I thought, well, that's fantastic. It's a good start. It was actually on that trip back when I had my car accident and everything changed.
So we're going to lean into this, if you're ready, Greg. So we're going to lean into that events of that one particular day. I guess it was a day that sort of started off like many others.
Yeah, I mean, it was the last day of the course, obviously, so that had come to its conclusion. Had known our final results, and we were all, because we were soldiers from all around the country, coming from different corps. So we were all sort of saying our farewells and things like that. The night before we'd actually gone out, there was probably, I don't know, half dozen, 8 of us that went out. And this was the last chance we were all probably going to see each other, unless we stumbled across each other, some other postings and things like that. But more times than not, you wouldn't have seen each other again. So we went out. I was 19, young, and full of life and beans. And I don't know what time we knocked off the day before, but we were probably out having a meal by sort of 6 o'clock that night. I think I got into bed about 5:30 in the morning. So it had been quite a big night, lots of drinking, and just as I said, like a really late night. Now we were getting mustered again at 6 o'clock. Yeah, so I basically got into bed for 30 minutes. And I don't know. Who knows why?
Well, we used to do all those things at 19. We're invincible at 19.
That's right. So I got up 6 a.m. probably, I don't know, maybe had 10 minutes sleep if I got that, and had to work sort of that day, just finishing off parts of our course, and I think probably tidying up and helping clean up the course and buildings and things like that. But worked through that day, and then at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we were sort of told, that's it, you can leave, and away you go. And I'd driven up there. I wasn't going to drive my car originally, but there was a guy who I worked with in Pucka who was from Sydney, and he said to me, or suggested that I really should take my car, because I was just going to catch a train up. Take my car because I can use the car to drive around Sydney and do things on weekends when you weren't needed to be on course or working. So I drove up. I didn't use the car the whole time, sat in the car park, didn't do anything until I got in it to come home, 4 o'clock that afternoon. I'd been out all night, I'd worked that day, got in the car, and away I went. I don't really remember the details of the trip coming back, other than I remember stopping a couple of times to get some fuel. Yeah, actually, I think it was a Wednesday evening that I left Sydney. So about midnight Thursday, stopped around Puckapunyal, knowing that I had Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday all off before I had to start back at base on Monday. I remember pulling up, and you could look across and sort of see your barracks and your room and things like that. And I thought, I really probably should go in and have a sleep, as there's no one up at home. It's the middle of the night. Get some sleep and finish it all tomorrow morning. I've got a bed that's 500 metres away from me. But like you said, you're 19, you're invincible. I just put the car back in gear and away I went again, thinking, I can just get to Mum's. And they knew I was coming home through the night, so she's probably maybe expecting me in some way. That was the plan, get home, because I wanted to, obviously, my mates and my girlfriend and that, they were the priority back then. And then about an hour later, so probably around Dalesford way, just outside of Dalesford, about 50 k's from home, is when I started to, if you've ever driven a car when you're sleepy, you get the head nods and the wobble, your sort of eyes start to get a bit droopy, and I started to do all these things. I remember putting the window down to try and keep awake that way. I remember turning my music up louder. I remember putting the air conditioning on. Remember, this is the middle of the night in country Victoria, so it was pretty cool, even though it was February. And I just had I had a pair of running shorts on and just a really light 3/4 length t-shirt. I remember wearing that. And I guess eventually, all those things that you tried to do, they run out and there's nothing left to do. The next thing I remember was just sort of looking ahead, and the car lights like I could see bush, then I saw the road, and then I saw nothing. And so what would have happened was I was rounding a bend when I've come to. The lights were heading towards the bush. I think I've grabbed the wheel to steer out of it. I've oversteered, gone across the road, jumped the fence, through the top of a fence. The car's landed on its side in a paddock, and then it's skidded on its side until it's crashed into a tree, and then it's fallen back down on its wheels. Where it impacted the tree was right above the driver-passenger roof line. So when it's hit the tree, it's snapped my neck forward, my head forward, and fractured and dislocated C6, C7 vertebrae in my neck. Where it's dislocated, it's then pinched the spinal cord, and that's where the damage has been done. I don't know how long I was out for, but I was probably out. Well, actually, I remember it immediately after the accident because I just remember lots of noise and banging and things like that. And then everything stopping and me just sort of sitting there thinking, what's just happened here? I remember still sitting in the car. I don't remember being uncomfortable in terms of my head being forced down or anything like that. I do remember having a really stiff neck. You know how, if you wake up and you've slept wrong, so I remember sort of rolling my head around thinking, oh God, my neck's a bit bloody sore, and definitely not the smartest thing to have done with a spinal injury. I remember thinking, I remember sort of patting my legs thinking, wow, that's weird. I can't sort of feel my legs very well. And I thought, I don't remember whether I could move them or not, but I just thought I need to get out of the car and try and flag someone down, try and get some help and get out of this situation. So I remember taking my seatbelt off, I remember opening the door, and I remember climbing out. But then all I remember is landing face first on the ground. And I thought, what's going on here? And I thought, well, if I can't walk, then I'll just have to crawl or something to get up to the road. Because, it's dark, it's night. I didn't even know where I was. I didn't know what was going on. So I started to crawl, and I kept crawling, and I thought, after a while, this is going nowhere. I don't know where I am. I don't know what's going on. I'm tired. By now, I could taste blood in my mouth because the roof had actually split my head open quite badly. Oh. So I was sort of thinking, this is it. I'm stuffed. So I lay on the ground, and I've never really given up on anything in my life, but at that point I did. And I thought, this is it. This is exactly where it's all over. It's all done. And I lay there and I apologised to my mother because I didn't make it home. And I apologised to my friends because I didn't make it home. And then I closed my eyes and I thought, well, that's it. And that was literally where I thought it was all done. Then I heard a voice, Dad, there's someone down here. And then that was it again. The next memory I had was I was in a hospital, which turned out to be Daylesford, and that was a vague sort of clouded memory. And then the next really clear memory I have was my mum beside me. They'd transferred me from Daylesford to Ballarat, and I was laying on a hospital bed in Ballarat with her beside me. But that voice I'd heard was the farmer and his son, and they had been in this paddock pulling these trees down through the day before, and they were coming down to pull this one tree that was still remaining. They hadn't been able to get down the day before. They'd run out of time.
Oh, and that was the one tree.
That's the one tree
that your car hit. Yeah. Wow.
And I'd knocked it over for them. So they came down and they found me, and the rest is sort of history. I was very lucky that they did when they found me when they did, because I was pretty much told another hour or so I would have frozen to death. So I had hypothermia. I was wrapped up in a space blanket for about 3 days, I think, so trying to get my body temperature back to its normal range. So that was pretty much it. And then when I wake up with my mum, I just sort of, what's going on? And she said, you've had a car accident, you've got some damage to your neck, but we don't really know what that means. By the end of the day, I was in a police helicopter being flown from Ballarat to the Alston Hospital in Melbourne.
First of all, thank you for sharing and being so honest in what happened in that moment. It is appreciated, and I think people hearing what happened in that moment will give people an understanding of where you've come from, where you've been, and where you're heading. So you arrived to the Alston Hospital. How long were you in hospital together, and what's going on at the time?
I suppose that first experience in intensive care was, I guess, just examination. And I just remember being asked lots of questions. I remember getting poked and prodded with pins and things like that in all these different areas to determine what sensation and movement and stuff like that I had. Because obviously, any damage to your spinal cord is going to have repercussions on feeling and movement, autonomic systems of your body that, like your heart rate and all those sorts of things that just happen, digestion and your bowels, your bladder, all that sort of stuff. So they were assessing all that. In the end, they determined that I had a fracture dislocation of C6, C7, as I said before, and no idea other than that. Off I went to the ward. Now, for the first 2 weeks, I couldn't move anything from my neck down. What happens is your body goes into what they call spinal shock, and it just shuts down, and it's sort of essentially it's doing its healing and it's doing its own assessments in its own time, I suppose. And for that 2 weeks was horrific in terms of thought processes and things like that. One minute I was a 19-year-old kid who had his whole future ahead of him, I decided that, and I thought, oh, this is what I want. I really want to be a 20-year soldier. I loved the job. I loved my friends. I had these ambitions of, doing this SAS course and seeing where that went. I'd just become a PTI, and all of a sudden all that was gone. I was now just a 19-year-old laying in a bed who couldn't move anything from his chin down. What sort of life is this? And I remember having conversations like that with my mother. I don't want to be here anymore. Like, how is this? This isn't living. I don't want to live like this.
Mm.
And those conversations went, probably the first couple of months, I would have thought, in hospital. What had happened is that for me to heal, they'd put me in traction. What they'd done is they'd screwed these metal screws, and they were attached to these head tongs, and they'd screwed those into the sides of my skull. And these head tongs went up over the top of your head. Then a cable ran off the end of that, over the end of your bed, and it had weight hanging on it. I can't remember how much weight was attached to mine, but what that obviously did was then pull your spine or your vertebrae into alignment, into traction, and hold them in a position like that they could then heal. So 12 weeks, that's how I was, laying on my back.
Sounds grueling.
So I had no idea what my life was going to be. Now, after those 2 weeks, I remember laying on my side one day, what they would do is, obviously, if you're in one position in a bed for any extended period of time, there's risks of pressure sores and areas and things like that. Because if your body's not functioning, you're losing muscle mass and you're losing weight, and all of a sudden all those bony prominences that are a skeleton start to show themselves. So what they do is they have these teams come in of orderlies, and they turn you over and they move you and put you in positions so that you can relieve the pressure on the body. So I remember I'd been put onto my side one day, and it certainly breaks the boredom of looking at the roof the whole time as well, because when you're staring at the ceiling and the only thing you can see is that area that your eyes are able to move around peripherally, you miss out on a heck of a lot that's going on. So I was on my side and my hand was out, and all of a sudden I could see these little flickers in my fingers, and I just thought, oh my God, there's some movement there. Yeah, there could be something coming back. And that got a little bit more and more over time, and to a point that I pretty much am now, where my left hand is not too bad, works quite well. Basically, that level of C6, C7 essentially makes you a quadriplegic. Anything below the neck, like below the vertebrae in your neck, the cervical vertebra, you start getting to thoracic, you become then classified paraplegic. So I was a quadriplegic. I started to get these little flickers of finger function. Left hand's not too bad. Right hand is worse, but I can still do sorts of things with them. I can't really grip things very well, very strongly. My arms and upper body probably work at, 95%. There are some muscles that didn't sort of come back with function and things like that, but majority of them are good. I can push a manual chair and lift myself around, get in and out of the car and off the floor and all those sorts of things. No function in my lower body, so from probably probably mid-chest, so I've got no abdominal or core or back or any of that functioning. My legs don't work. I have sensation and varying sort of degrees of sensation, touch and feel and things like that. And all of that adds up to what they then call incomplete quadriplegia. Quadriplegia, they're still affected 4 limbs, but I still have quite a lot more movement than just being maybe driving a wheelchair with your chin or anything like that. Kind of consider myself fortunate in some ways and not so fortunate in others.
I gather you're in hospital for a long time, and
yep.
You've talked about the darker days of what it was like for you. You're internally trying to find what the hell is going on with me right now? What's my future looking like? How were the responses from your family and your loved ones around you through this time?
You know, I don't remember a lot of reactions from people, but I remember one clear reaction from my mum, and she said, if you think that I'm going to give up on you after spending all this money on food and clothing and education, then you've got another thing coming. And I just thought, it's as simple as that. Why would your parents give up on you? You know, if she wasn't going to give up on me, then why will I give up on myself? I need to give myself some sort of chance and see where this can go.
That unconditional love from your mum, and even though it was like probably a harsh reality and brutal words at the time, it was probably gave you that kickstart, that sort of brain game changing moment where you just thought, okay, mum, all right.
Yeah. When I look back now, and a lot of things in those early days where she just basically said, get over yourself and get on with it. And, well, I'd be looking for some sort of help and some empathy and she'd be just, well, I can give you empathy, but I'm not going to give you sympathy. So get going. What's the saying? Get busy living or get busy dying, I think is the quote out of Shawshank Redemption. So, so that when I look back now, I think, well, yeah, it's probably fair.
So your rehabilitation is grueling, as you've given us a snippet of what that rehabilitation's like. It goes for 1.5 years. Every little milestone is a victory, and then every setback is a questioning doubt. But then about 1.5 years into your rehabilitation, you were lent a racing wheelchair.
That's right, yeah. So my whole time actually in the hospital was 6 months. So 3 months laying on my back, and then 3 months sort of getting up and using a wheelchair and learning how to do the dressing and working with fingers and hands that don't work 100%. Yeah, a lot of that sort of second 3 months was that. I was learning to sort of drive a car again towards the end of that. And during that time, yeah, you would have different people, peers, I guess, in a way you would probably call them, who would come in and chat to you about life in a chair and what things to look for. And these are things that you can maybe get some assistance with. There wasn't a lot of it back in those days. Things are a lot better nowadays for that sort of stuff. Like there's some really good organisations that get in, and like the Australian Quadriplegics Association, AQA, they're fantastic at it now with peer support. So my physiotherapist at the time was amazing. I think I was really lucky that I had this group of people around me that were really, really supportive, really proactive. And look, and I think my approach to things at that stage had changed a lot as well. So they were engaged in what I wanted to do. And these were really proactive people who wanted to help me the best that they could and really sort of push me a little bit as well. So this physiotherapist, Yvonne, was one of these people. Now, she had a friend, Michael, and Michael, who now is a great mate of mine and has been for all these years, was about the same level of injury as I am. So incomplete quad, basically the same function and movement. He was a policeman who, at a party, dove off a shed into a swimming pool, and he changed his direction and ended up hitting the bottom of the pool, broke his neck. He was a wheelchair racer. So Yvonne had said, look, I've got this friend Michael, he's a wheelchair racer, he's going to come in and have a chat to you and you guys might hit it off and stuff like that. And Michael's about 15 or 16 years older than me. So Michael came in and, yeah, we had a chat, and, yeah, I don't know what sort of tickled my fancy with having, borrowing a wheelchair racing chair, because I never really enjoyed athletics. I loved football, played football, but I didn't like running laps at football. So I didn't know why I thought I was going to get in a racing wheelchair and enjoy it. He'd come and see me a couple of times in hospital. I'd left hospital was when I got the chair. There used to be an athletics track at the university in Ballarat, and I remember going down there with my brother and probably my mum with this chair and getting lifted into this, because I wasn't strong enough to transfer. I didn't have there's quite a bit of technique involved in transferring as well, which makes, it all becomes about levers and movement to make the job a bit easier when you don't have the function. So I didn't know how to do that. So they lifted me in, strapped me up, put some gloves on, and I went for a push. And I probably only went 100 metres and I was absolutely exhausted, stuffed. But all of a sudden, I now had a focus of, I want to go 200 metres, and I want to go 400 metres. This is where athletics became the thing that grabbed me, I suppose. Well, during all this time, I was going through the process of being discharged from the army. So I didn't have a job. They basically said, if you can't bear arms, you can't do anything for us. And I don't know whether that's changed these days, whether you'd still be able to keep a job in there in some regard, because you're not useless. There's certainly things you'd be able to still do in the service.
Especially your knowledge and the fact you've gone through the training.
Yeah, that's right. And just...
How did that feel for you at that time?
Oh, look, it was hard at that age and with that understanding, because I probably agreed with it, because I couldn't do the things that I thought that they wanted me to do and that I wanted to do. So I didn't have the maturity to understand that, well, there are other things I can do and still be with my mates and things like that. But so I probably just accepted it and got on with it. But as I said, so I didn't have a job. This came along, athletics. I was obviously going to be looked after because I had an injury at work and in the army. I essentially could focus full time on this sporting career. Yeah, following those initial sort of days at the track, I got right into it. I fell in love with it, and I kind of took it to the next level.
Where did the inspiration come to go and be a Paralympian? Obviously, there's a process. There's allowable disabilities, and then you undergo a classification assessment. What sparked you to then go and think, you know what, I'm going to go represent Australia as a Paralympian?
It all come from that initial spark of me wanting to challenge myself and push myself to that next thing all the time. That first 100 metres, the second 200 metres, then it became, I want to do a race. So if I want to do a race, I need a coach. So I need to find a coach. So I was obviously, still friends with Michael, and Michael was still racing. So he was encouraging me, helping me along. And then I went to my first ever competition in New South Wales. I'd done a little bit of training. I can't remember whether I'd trained with a coach before that or not. But anyway, I knew the distances that I had to race. I think I was probably just pushing with Michael on the track and doing the things that he was telling me to do. I went away to this competition in Sydney, raced there. This was at the same time that the Paralympics were either on or about to start, Seoul Paralympics. So all the Paralympic wheelchair races weren't there, they were away. So all these other athletes were sort of getting ready for that. This was my very first wheelchair race. So I just turned up to this event that was on. So none of these people were there. So I raced and I won these events. Only because no one else was there, sort of thing. But that sort of, it was really good. Like, it kind of inspired me. I really enjoyed it. I met a lot of different, new people. And funny enough, another Michael from Melbourne as well, who became another really, really good friend and a real mentor. He and I trained together a lot as well. So we had this little group going further, and I ended up with a coach. And I suppose it just went from there, like going from different sort of meet to different sort of meet, and then progressively getting better and better, and then someone coming to you and say, what would you think of trying for the Paralympics? And it's like, yeah, of course I would. I want to see how far I can take this. So that's probably how I ended up getting to my first Paralympic Games. And then, and again, first Paralympic Games were 1992 in Barcelona. I got my bum spanked in the single, in my individual events, but it was a brilliant experience, unbelievable. But of course, not achieving the goals that you want to achieve, you go home, you train for another 4 years, you go to Atlanta, win a silver medal in Atlanta. Like, I won a bronze medal in the marathon in Barcelona, which was amazing.
Yes, it is.
There were little things that kind of, it wasn't just getting your bum spanked and going home with your tail between your legs. I did have some successes, absolutely. Just kind of, keep that inspiration going as well. And each 4 years, there was one more little taste, and which wanted me to try harder and go further. And the goal, for me, all the way through, was always to win a gold medal. And if I did, I did. If I didn't, at the end of the career, then that was always the goal.
So we get to Sydney, we're at the 2000 Olympics.
Third Games,
and that's where that taste of gold came through.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about it?
From 98, the World Championships in Birmingham in England, it was sort of I went away there and I came home with 4 or 5, I think it might have been 5 gold medals from the World Championships. And I thought, what's going on here? There was just like this flick, it sort of switched. But it wasn't as simple as that. It was just, a lot of learning had gone in the 10 years leading up to this, from 1988 to 1998. Losses and learning and understanding and changing training, changing coaches a couple of times. And by then, we obviously knew that the Paralympics were going to be in Sydney. So that was a big motivation in itself, because for the first time, my parents and my family and friends had seen me race, but nothing in this sort of level. Back in the other two Paralympic Games, they might have seen a little bit of a snippet on the ABC TV for half an hour on a night. There was no social media. There was no you couldn't watch streaming events on live, and there was no way you got the coverage that you get now. I remember going to a payphone in the village to ring mum or dad or whatever to ring up and say, "Oh yeah, had my race today. Came fourth. It was good." Whatever else. Or I won a bronze medal today. Oh yeah, it was good. Yeah, weather's nice. So all this sort of stuff. It was just nothing like you get now. So for them to be able to come to Sydney and actually see me race it's the biggest event for an athlete with a disability, the Paralympic Games.
Sure is.
2000 was a year in itself, let alone away from the Games, because we were flying to America earlier in the year to do an event. Well, when we came home, I'd set a world record in the 800 metres and I'd set a world record in the 1500 metres. Now, I never, ever, ever thought, let alone winning a race, I would set world records. So after that, we sort of thought, I'm not going too bad. Yeah. So I was pretty confident when Sydney came around. And look, to have that sort of confidence behind you and your home event, that confidence is not only good for you, but it also puts your opposition at a different level, because all of a sudden they're starting to think, oh man, this guy's he's in shape. So they're starting to worry about me rather than worrying about them. Whereas I was like, you know what, I'm just going to worry about myself. I know I've done it before only a few weeks ago. So I'm just going hard, and they can keep up, they keep up. And that's how it went. It was just one of those amazing times where you just have that clarity of confidence that just happened. I don't think it's ever happened again in my life. And I think I'd done a lot of visualization in my training leading up to it. So I'd kind of run these races through my head thousands of times in all sorts of different scenarios. I knew all the athletes that I was racing with, because a lot of them had become my friends over the years that we'd raced against each other from around the world. So I knew who they were, I knew what they sounded like, I knew what they looked like, I knew how they raced, I knew the positions that they wanted to race in. So I'd broken all this down with my psychologist and put it all into my head. I had practiced it every night for, probably, I wouldn't say the whole 4-year lead up, but at least 2 years of it. So when I raced, it was just like, well, I've already done it.
I've done it. I've already achieved it in my head.
I don't know why people are surprised.
It's interesting over the years that you talk about the word visualization. There is so much research now. I mean, not just for athletics, just everyday life.
Yeah.
There is so much research in the power of visualization, how we walk ourselves through doing the task from the start to the end, as opposed to just thinking of the end result. Yep. They've also used people as examples in different studies where they've given them different ways to visualize, and then they saw the outcome of what they achieved. So it's amazing that even back then that you were using such powerful tools as part of your training to get the results that you were, because obviously Sydney was a really great result for you on home ground.
Yeah.
It just served everything that you were inspiring to achieve. But then what's interesting is, so you do really well at athletics, you spent all this time in preparation, then you thought, I'm going to go give something else a try. What happens next?
Yeah, so I retired I retired in 2002 because I was still sort of trying to race, and I just sort of lost the passion for it a little bit. I'd been doing it for about 15 years, sort of by the time I'd retired. I just lost the passion for it. I just sort of, training was getting hard, like not so much hard physically, but mentally, just to get out of bed and keep doing the same sort of thing. I'd achieved everything that I'd ever wanted to achieve, plus a little bit more with those world records and things like that. I just sort of lost it a little bit. And then someone came to me and said to me, and I knew about wheelchair rugby, but I'd never played it, and I'd only sort of seen little bits and pieces of it. But asked me if I'd like to play just socially, like nothing else, just jump in a chair and come and be part of a team. And I thought, you know what, I'm not racing anymore. Sure. Yeah, just hang out with some friends and play a bit of social wheelchair rugby. Well, that probably inspired a few competitive juices that was still kind of floating around in my body, yeah.
Let's give it a shot.
Yes, as I can do. I might see where this can go. And I took it a bit more serious than just a social game.
Well, in researching, I believe wheelchair rugby made its debut at the Sydney Olympics.
That's right, yes, it did.
And it originated from Canada.
Yep, yeah. So originally it was called murder ball.
Murder. Why would they call a game like that murder ball?
Marketing terms, it probably worked very well, so they ended up changing it. There is actually a movie out there if anyone is interested called Murder Ball. It's won awards. It was an iconic movie at the time. Came out in around 2004, somewhere around that, early 2000s. Very good movie. It tells a story about a few different athletes and their journeys into competing in wheelchair rugby at Paralympic Games and life in a chair a bit too. So yeah, look out for it. But yeah, so it was developed in Canada, and it was a bit of a cross between game codes, I suppose, of basketball and ice hockey and American football, and there are different sort of elements of the game from each, I suppose. The physicality from ice hockey and American football, and then the rules a little bit from basketball, and it was originally designed by some quadriplegics who just could not functionally play wheelchair basketball. Back in those days, wheelchair basketball was one of the only wheelchair sports that someone could do if they were using a wheelchair, and it didn't suit everybody. So these ingenious Canadians came up with wheelchair rugby, or murder ball.
So even though you had retired in 2002, you found a new lease of life in wheelchair rugby, and you decide to go to the London 2012 Olympics.
Well, it wasn't, it's not as simple as me deciding, but yes. But, I certainly, trained hard and put myself up for selection. So it was actually 2008. So the Beijing Games were the first ones that I went to for wheelchair rugby. I thought I'll do everything I can, train hard. And I obviously knew how to be an athlete, especially at a high performance level, an elite level after my career with wheelchair racing. So I knew that I had to work hard, and I knew with my physical training type background and working with coaches in wheelchair athletics, I sort of knew the things that I had to do, and just took that on myself, coached myself to get there. I obviously had a team that I played for that had a coach, so I was learning the game from him and from those athletes in my team and so on. But the physical side of it, I was just coaching myself and looking after myself. So I was fortunate that I got to a position that allowed me to be eligible to be selected, and I was selected to go to Beijing. So that was good. A different sport, but back in the Paralympic world, which I'd become pretty accustomed to after recent years.
That's brilliant. So you have the experience in a totally different field of sport. You do the wheelchair rugby at Beijing. How did you go when you were there?
We ended up winning a silver medal.
Brilliant.
They'd won a silver medal in 2000 at the debut against the USA, and then again we won the silver medal again against the USA. So, and after that I sort of thought, oh, that's it. I reckon I'm done.
How old were you at this time?
So 2008, so I would have been in my late 30s.
Okay.
I wanted to see where it went. I got to a Paralympic Games and we won a silver medal, and that was great. So I again retired from Paralympic sport. The coach at the time then said to me, if you don't want to play anymore, would you be interested in being our physical trainer, our strength and conditioning coach for all of our athletes? And I said, yeah, sure, that'd be great. I'd love to still be involved. I don't think I can be an athlete anymore. I'm kind of done with that. So I came on as the strength and conditioning coach for the Australian team. He didn't have an assistant coach, so I sort of became his assistant coach as well. That was my role for a couple of years. I was still playing a little bit, just for fun, but then of course I had another thought where maybe I didn't give myself enough of a go.
So you had another epiphany. So you've retired from athletics, and now you've retired from wheelchair rugby, and then you become an assistant coach with the Paralympic Australian team and a mentor consultant and the strength training. Then you think, oh, you know what? I'm getting an epiphany. Those juices are flowing again, and why not? So what's next then?
That's right. And I thought I might have a go. And I said to the coach, I said, I just can't get this feeling out of me that I didn't get the absolute where I could get to in wheelchair rugby the first time. How would you feel if I had a go at London, 2012? And he said, sure, but you need to still write the programs.
So more work.
I stayed on board writing all the training programs, but then I became an athlete again. And that was in 2010. 2012, I got selected for the team. London was amazing, and Sydney was brilliant because of all the things that I've already spoken about with athletics and my family. London was just another games on its own in terms of just another level, I suppose. I mean, social media had just sort of started to take off. There was an absolute brilliant campaign out of Channel 4 in the UK focusing on Paralympic athletes. And they did these commercials and ran them through the UK and around Europe. And so there was this real buzz about Paralympic sport, and it was just getting a lot of exposure. The games were, the media was starting to really get on board with a lot more coverage. As I said, social media was now, Facebook was out and about, so people were starting to find people that they hadn't seen. I had army friends that I hadn't had contact with since my accident, because I pushed a lot of those guys away because it was a part of my life that was really important to me at the time, and all of a sudden it was gone. And I sort of, I was struggling with knowing whether I was going to be able to wipe my own nose again, let alone being around all these guys who were still doing the job that I'd never dreamed about it, and I'll tell you all about that too. But it was a job that I loved once I sort of got into it, and all these blokes were, all really good mates. But I just hated seeing them still going about that. So I lost kind of all contact with them. And it wasn't until London 2012 when Facebook thought it was starting to get out and about, and someone must have, seen that I'd been announced as a flag bearer and things like that, and they reached out and said, "Oh, g'day, Smithy, how you going?" And away it went. So now I've got probably at least half a dozen guys that we've caught up a few times over the last few years, but we speak to each other all the time on Messenger and Facebook and things like that. So these guys were sort of seeing my name on the TV being selected, and at the time I'd also been named as the Australian team captain and flag bearer for like the opening ceremony flag bearer, which was just unbelievable in itself to be chosen to lead our country in the opening ceremony carrying the national flag. It was just so I'd been selected for another Paralympics, which was brilliant, and I was so excited about it. But this was just another something else again.
What an honour to be asked.
That's right. It was like it was an acknowledgement of all the years that I'd sort of put into training and trying to be an athlete and having some successes along the way. And it was just an incredible games. And then we had a team that was an amazing team of athletes, and we smashed everybody. Like we went through that tournament with an average winning margin of 13 goals or something, which is you only get one goal for every time you cross the try line. So to win by at an event at that level by an average of 13, just something you would never see done again. So we won the gold medal. So it was just an unbelievable event and a brilliant finale. And it was my finale to a career, an actual athletic career.
Third time lucky saying that you had retired. I'm going to make a connection. At the time of the London 2012 Olympics and Paralympics, I was actually living there at the time. London had been my home for 15 years.
Yeah, okay.
I moved back the year after. And I agree with you. It was absolutely phenomenal. The buzz, London's already a lively playground, and it was alive above and beyond anything that I could have ever imagined. Paralympics was making a really wonderful platform on social media and on television. And even like recently when we had our Olympics and Paralympics last year, what was brilliant, it's now on mainstream TV. Going back to what you said, you're ringing your parents going, hey, you might get half an hour on ABC, where it's now on platform, national television, and there's a lot more sponsorship.
Yeah.
There's a lot more awareness.
No, it's certainly come a long way, and hopefully still got a way to go, but yeah.
Agreed.
But no, it's been good.
Agreed.
It's been great.
You have been on quite a ride through this journey. Thank you. You've shared so much about it. I'm going to talk about the relationship through your life while all this was going on. You had a partner at the time when the accident happened. I gather after that things didn't work out, and you've had a couple of relationships since then and been married, and there's been some instances where that didn't work out either. Can you share with us in a relationship aspect about what it's been like for you after your accident?
Yeah, sure. A girlfriend at the time of my accident, and so I was 19, she was 17. And at the time, as I said before, I kind of pushed even my army friends away. I just had this focus, obviously, of what my new life was going to be about. I didn't think there was room for a girlfriend at that stage. And to be honest, I didn't think a girlfriend would want to be with me anyway. I mean, I had no idea what my life was going to be. What would a 17-year-old girl who had her whole world and life ahead of her, probably family dreams and all those sorts of things. And I never asked her about that at all. I just made the decision probably before her. But yeah, so I break that up, and it certainly wasn't easy, but it was done. I guess then, I sort of started to focus on the things I needed to do just in my own life. I never ever lost those desires to want to be with a woman. I've never have, and my wife probably calls me a pest because I'm always pestering her to be carrying on and all sorts of things. The desires never went away just because my legs weren't working or anything like that, and I've still got sensation. Things still work down there. There's nothing that has stopped down there. So I had girlfriends on and off still. Early on, I was still probably trying to find out what that meant from a wheelchair. So it was sort of, I kind of kept thinking there was obviously differences because I was now in a wheelchair and we couldn't go skipping along the beach hand in hand and those sorts of things. So there were the obvious things that were going to be different in a relationship. There was always that stereotype of being the man. You've got to be the bloke
the alpha.
Yeah, who can look after his wife or his partner, and the way that a man should do that. And I probably still have a lot of those kind of historical sort of thoughts, I suppose, in the back of my mind. But yeah, I met a girl, and it was funny because she was a girl that I'd known as a teenager growing up. We were we'd camp at the same campground and things, so we sort of we knew each other. When we started going out, I was probably mid-20s at that stage. Got to the stage of getting married, and yeah, we got married. I was still probably discovering sort of the sexual side of my life then. So yeah, you probably wouldn't say it was a normal relationship in that regard, sexual sort of type relationship. At that time, I was travelling a lot. This was in my athletic career. I was overseas probably 3 or 4 times a year for anywhere up to 10 or 12 days. Never for really extended periods. I suppose when I go back and think about wheelchair racing, I was probably never away any longer than maybe a week and a half. But it was a fairly frequent, interstate and internationally. And I guess that was pretty hard on a relationship. Like I said, we were still both pretty young. I think she was only in her early 20s. We'd never had the family kind of discussions, but that was obviously somewhere where she would probably wanted to have had. And I would have been happy to have done the same thing. But in the end, it was really hard for her, and she didn't sort of see that it was going to work out that way. So we ended up breaking up, getting divorced. I was back by myself and girlfriends and things like that. And then I met another girl that got serious again. And so now I was in around 30-ish, early 30s. She was just finishing university. So she was really busy at university. I was, again, still travelling, doing all those sorts of things. But we had a good relationship. Then I think at some point, yeah, again, she got to a point where she was looking in other directions and it just petered out. It sounds very normal, I suppose, in normal relationships, but there are a lot of things that come into it about, I imagine, from the other side, being with someone in a wheelchair, on the things that they probably miss out in life. And I get that, like I really do. I can see it being quite hard for a lot of people living with and going through a relationship with someone in a wheelchair. It's not as simple as just, let's just go and do it. Let's go and do that. There's a bit of thinking and processes that have to go into if we want to go on a holiday or if we want to get in the car and go and do it. I get in the car. She's the one that's always got to put the chair in. It could be raining. She's the one that's got to load the chair up all the time, carry the heavy suitcases, do a lot of the big manual labour. So I get that it's not a normal, typical, I won't say fairy tale relationship, but so even though obviously they were heartbreaking to have relationships break up, they're never great at any time.
True.
I suppose I always saw a breakup as being not caused by me, but my situation would have been definitely one of the reasons that were highly considered as a catalyst.
I'm going to add something here because one thing that I've noticed in the last couple of years is obviously everyone's heard of this person, Dylan Alcott, and his partner, Chantal. I mean, everyone's got their views and there's different schools of thought, but one thing that's been wonderful in seeing Dylan do and Chantal is like, this is how our relationship is, and I'm in a wheelchair. There's still so many amazing things we can do. They're just different.
That's right. Yeah.
But we still succeed.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been really fortunate 15 or 16 years ago, I met a girl who is exactly in that frame. She's someone who's caring and giving and loving, and it didn't matter, and it's never mattered. And I don't know whether it's because she was sort of working in that environment when we met. She was a personal carer for a player, a wheelchair rugby player that I was playing with at the time.
Okay.
So I don't have any personal care at all. I'm fully independent, so I've never had a carer, look after me in any way in my daily life and things like that. So, and it's brilliant. But it takes a certain person, to work in that environment. So Amaya was, obviously someone that had that personality. We met and we were obviously physically attracted to each other and emotionally attracted to each other, and we connected, and we've been together for 15 years. We've got 3 boys and we're still soldiering along well.
Oh, bless. You must be just really grateful for them. And
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, for a long time, I never probably considered having kids, really. Part of, having a disability can make it a little bit tough for some people. Not everyone's cut out for it. And they thought they were to start with, and in the end, it didn't really work out. Whereas Amaya is just, she's just got that temperament, and that, she's just a beautiful person who understands, and so it's been fantastic. So I've got, I'm a little older in my life to have the kids, but it all works out.
Because statistically, the reality is that relationships don't tend to last after quite a significant event like this.
No, a traumatic incident can affect everybody in different ways, not just the obvious person that it happens to. So
had Amaya been married before, or you were
No, she hadn't. Well, you'd have to ask her why she
chose you.
Wanted to, I guess. But I'll never forget, and her father and mother are still quite open about the fact that, at the time when she came home and said, I've met Greg and Greg's in a wheelchair, and they were like, no way, like, what are you doing? This is your future you've got to think about here. And as I said to you, I get that absolutely completely. It takes a certain person to be able to do it. It really does. To be honest, if the roles were reversed, I don't know how I would be. But I'm glad they're not, and I'm ecstatic that she chose. In saying that, her dad, we had a chat, I think over Easter or something, and he reminded me again of the fact that, back when we first found out, we were both completely against it. We were trying to turn her off and steer her in a different direction. But now we know you and what the life you've got and the 3 boys, and there's absolutely no way. We're quite embarrassed to sort of think that way. So give it a chance.
Yeah, give it a chance. Oh, it's funny. I'm going to share that Greg and I have a bit of a 6 degrees of separation. I actually know Greg's mother-in-law, Janine. I'm also under really strict instructions that I have to say everything amazing about her.
So you would be. No, but they're both amazing people. They really are. They're great people.
Just hearing you talk about life for you now, it just sounds like such a great space and such a beautiful space. Even though you've retired, I'm doing the speech marks because who knows?
No, definitely.
Definitely. You're still a consultant mentor with the Australian wheelchair rugby team.
Yeah, still their strength and conditioning coach, physical prep coach, yeah. So
what's happening going forward?
Oh, well, so at the moment, we're in preparation for Paris, which are the next Paralympic Games in 2024. There's lead-up comps heading up to that, so we've got a World Championships in Denmark later this year, so the guys are all in preparation for that. But I'm confident by Paris, we're only talking 2 years, we'll be back winning that gold medal again.
Well, it sounds like current Australian wheelchair rugby team have really great coaches and really great consultants and really great specialists to help support them get there. I mean, what you've gone through, all your preparation in the game, out of the game, retiring from the game, you have worn every T-shirt that caters to every type of scenario that the young athletes today can wear, and you can support them.
Yeah, well, I hope so. And that's what I'm about. I still train every day in some capacity because physical fitness and health are still something that's really important to me. And, I'm coming up 55, and I keep telling my family that, there's only one world record that I'm going for now, and that's old age. I'm targeting, when I die as the oldest person in the world. Because I said, why do you go into the gym and why do you do this? I said, well, because I've got this, if I want to get to the oldest person in the world, that's what I have to do. I have to look after myself.
I love it. That's a great ambition. I love that ambition. I have not heard that one. That's a first.
Well, we'll see how we go. Oh, yeah, well, you never know.
You never know. And do you know what? With that mindset and that attitude, I can see you getting there.
Well, I hope there's still some people around that I know. I can say I told you. But anyway, so I still train every day. But my main focus these days is not, it's obviously my family and where they're going and what the kids growing up, but it's also to help these new emerging athletes and current athletes to achieve the goals and things that they set in their sporting lives as well.
Everything you have shared today has been absolutely amazing. You've really laid it all out on the table. And it's funny, you've even answered questions that I thought, should I ask that? Should I approach that topic? And you've laid it all out on the table, which has been amazing, and it's very inspiring for many others. So I just want to say thank you for doing that. I'm going to finish off with the one question that I ask everybody. So the name of this podcast is called The Brain Game Changer, How Heartfelt Stories, Awareness and Education Can Change the Game. If there's one piece of information, one nugget, one quote, what would it be?
For me, it's always about being, I suppose, true to myself, honest in what I believe. I also really try to be respectful in listening to what other people have to say as well. And then everyone has their beliefs, whatever it is. Acceptance about everybody and for everybody, and give life everything that you can and the best that you can, because you never know when it's not there anymore, I suppose. I mean, I could have given it all up when I was 19 years old and then missed out on everything in the last 30 odd years.
That's really good advice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I want to thank you for listening to this episode today and supporting the Brain Game Changer and the guests we interview. I hope it added some reassurance or valuable tools, no matter how big or small, that will continue assisting you in being the wonderful game changer that you are. The best way to support the Brain Game Changer podcast is to like, share with family and friends, or subscribe, so each weekly episode is easily available to you. I'd love to hear your feedback, and you can also find me on Instagram at The Brain Game Changer. Drop in and say hello, and check out the regular posts about awareness and education on various important topics and issues. Until next time, sending lots of love and light your way, and looking forward to sharing the space with you again soon. Take care.